course, colleagues can be joining us remotely according to the modalities established by our Council. The agenda is very rich, and it has to do with the projection of Italy and the European countries in the Indo-Pacific, and that's why today we have the hearing of the Ambassador of Malaysia to Italy, Mr. Zahid Rastam. On behalf of the members of the committee, I'd like to thank the Ambassador, who is with Mr. Ahmad Fuad bin Moud, a Norsin advisor, and Dr. Leonora Testa. Considering the fact that we've got very little time ahead of us, I'd like to give the floor to the Ambassador in order for him to address us. Thank you very much.
Buon pomeriggio, signor Presidente e stimati membri della Commissione. Sono arrivato nel vostro bellissimo paese solo alla fine di ottobre dell'anno scorso e la mia conoscenza della lingua italiana è ancora un lavoro in corso. Vi ringrazio per avermi permesso di rivolgermi a questa Commissione in inglese. Mr. Chair, honourable ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation for me to speak in front of the committee. There has been, of course, a growing and ongoing discourse within the Italian government, the Italian parliament, and within the Italian foreign policy, academic and journalistic communities on the importance of the Indo-Pacific area and the need for Italy to be better engaged with the region. Traditionally, Italy has focused on the Mediterranean and the Near East. The fact that this subcommittee is undertaking this fact-finding investigation into the projection of Italy and European countries in the Indo-Pacific is acknowledgement of this region as strategic to global trade and security, including to Italy's own. It has been stated that this undertaking is against a backdrop of concern regarding geopolitical rivalry and the diffusion of global power into a more multipolar world. It is important to not forget that this region comprises of many countries which are deeply engaged in global trade and security, essential to global supply chains, and crucially, with sovereign right to determine for themselves what they feel is best for their own countries and the region. In this respect, we appreciate that this subcommittee has invited me, representing Malaysia, to give testimony today. The voices of those from the region, representing the region, is essential. For Malaysia, I will do so through sharing some snapshots through the lenses of, firstly, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, to which Malaysia is a member, and to which the principle of ASEAN centrality is relevant to any discussion of the Indo-Pacific. 2, Malaysia's overall foreign policy. And 3, bilateral relations between Malaysia and Italy, where things stand, as well as, importantly, where it should be and where it can go. On the first matter, one of the leading issues currently within international relations and a focus of this subcommittee is the increased geopolitical rivalry in the Indo-Pacific, leading to growing tensions and potential geostrategic realignments, disrupting global peace and stability if not managed properly. ASEAN knows this. ASEAN is at the heart of the crossroads where these rivalries converge. For ASEAN, the maintenance of regional peace and stability is crucial. ASEAN knows that it is imperative to manage the great power rivalry and tension and to remain vigilant in safeguarding its freedom, independence, and dignity. It is crucial that ASEAN remains the driving force in shaping the regional architecture, and as such, ASEAN centrality and unity continues to firmly underpin its interactions with the major powers, as well as with countries outside of the region. But what does this mean? How does ASEAN approach this? How does it interact with those powers, and what are the practical steps needed? First and foremost, the principle of ASEAN centrality promotes cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region with ASEAN-led mechanisms as platforms for dialogue and implementation of Indo-Pacific cooperation. ASEAN centrality recognizes the Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions as being closely integrated and interconnected. This principle of ASEAN centrality, applied through the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, sees the latter's implementation and approach as being aimed at, 1, offering an outlook to guide cooperation in the region, 2, helping to promote an enabling environment for peace, stability, and prosperity in the region in addressing common challenges, upholding the rules-based regional architecture, and promoting closer economic cooperation and thus strengthen confidence and trust. 3, enhancing the ASEAN community's building process and further strengthening the ASEAN-led mechanisms. And 4, exploring and implementing the ASEAN priority areas of cooperation, including on maritime cooperation, connectivity, the Sustainable Development Goals, and economic areas, as well as other areas. In other words, when it comes to the Asia-Pacific and the Indian Ocean regions, combined into the larger Indo-Pacific, it is necessary for ASEAN to be there in the interactions of the major and other powers. ASEAN has put itself forward, and it continues to strengthen the mechanisms to make this happen. Among them, most relevant, I think, for Italy is the ASEAN-EU cooperation. With the EU, for example, this has been through the ASEAN-EU ministerial meeting, of which the 24th meeting was held in Brussels in 2nd February. And additionally, there was the 3rd EU Indo-Pacific Ministerial Forum that was also held in Brussels on the 3rd. The ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and the ASEAN centrality principle have been recognized as crucial by our partners within and outside the region, and this includes the European Union as well. Countries which have developed their Indo-Pacific strategies understand the importance of including and giving prominence to this principle of ASEAN centrality. And it is so because it is a principle that brings together countries and seeks cooperation while lowering tensions. Economic growth and sustainable development is, again, an important aspect of the work looking forward. A future ASEAN would combine become a major player in the global economy with the 4th largest economy in the world, an average regional GDP growth estimated at about 5%, a combined GDP of over 20 trillion US dollars, and with all ASEAN member states reaching an upper middle income status. And we will do so by leveraging on science, technology, and innovation, leading digital transformation, managing future urban growth, and being integral to the global supply chain, and making ASEAN economically and financially resilient. Underpinning all this is a commitment to a green and blue ASEAN that is a future that is sustainable, equitable, and adaptive to new and emerging environmental and climate challenges. On my second point, regarding Malaysia specifically, we attach the utmost importance to peace, security, and stability in this region. Malaysia has always been interconnected to the world, from the times of the Malacca Sultanate in the 1500s to the colonial era under the Portuguese, Dutch, and the UK, the Japanese occupation during the Second World War, and now in our own independent capacity as a Federation of Malaya since 31st August 1957, and Malaysia from 16th September 1963. Malaysia's foreign policy has been consistent in being independent, principled, and pragmatic, founded on the values of peace, humanity, justice, and equality. From various prime ministers to our current prime minister, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim now, and various foreign ministers, one will see in Malaysia's foreign policy consistency on its principles. There may be nuances in emphasis, but the fundamentals remain the same. National development remains the #1 priority for Malaysia, and our nation's well-being is founded on strong and friendly relations with other countries and a commitment to the multilateral system. We promote a forward-looking and pragmatic foreign policy that facilitates trade, attracts foreign investment, as well as one which projects Malaysia as a stable and peaceful country. We adopt a prosper thy neighbor policy, and ASEAN, of course, remains a cornerstone of that. We recognize our strategic geopolitical location, being where we are, located at the crossroads of a major and strategic trading route between the East and the West in the center of Southeast Asia. These principles of peaceful coexistence and non-alignment are even more pertinent. We are fully aware of our responsibilities to ensure that our maritime zones are safe and secure for navigation, and Malaysia constantly undertakes enforcement, direct protection, and surveillance of its maritime zones. Our position on the South China Sea is something that I wish to share with the committee. Malaysia firmly holds the view that due to the complexity and sensitivity, the South China Sea issue must be managed in a peaceful and rational manner through dialogue and consultations. All parties must work together to maintain peace, security, and stability in the South China Sea and continue to build, maintain, and enhance mutual trust and confidence. Territorial and maritime disputes must be resolved by the relevant parties through peaceful means in accordance with the universally recognized principles of international law, including the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. All parties should ensure freedom of navigation in and over flight above the South China Sea as provided by international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS. All parties must avoid the use of or the threat of use of force, intimidation, and coercion. All parties should exercise self-restraint in the South China Sea. All parties should avoid actions deemed provocative that could increase tensions, and all claims in the South China Sea must be based on international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS. On my final point regarding Malaysia-Italy bilateral relations, our relationship remains warm, and we hope to explore further areas of cooperation, such as in cybersecurity, high technology, and digital and cultural diplomacy. We look forward for both sides to further intensify the frequency of visits at various levels. In the period of January to November of 2023, Italy was Malaysia's 24th largest trading partner, 24th largest export destination, and 22nd import source. Malaysia, on the other hand, was Italy's 55th largest trading partner, 62nd largest export destination, and 55th largest import source. With regard to investment, Italy is the 27th largest investor in Malaysia and ranked 7th for investors from EU countries. Both our countries have developed close cooperation in the defense sector, and Italy is one of the important sources of defense procurement for the Malaysian armed forces. Much more is possible. We welcome and have been working towards further investments from Italian companies, particularly in the areas of green technology, digital technology, and sustainable development projects. Malaysia has strong economic fundamentals, developed infrastructure, talented human capital, and a business-friendly investment policy and competitive investment incentives. We believe in and strongly encourage Italian investors to take advantage of Malaysia as a gateway into ASEAN, as well as other regional markets. As Italy continues its discourse on the Indo-Pacific, interest in this region provides opportunities for Italy to collaborate further on trade, investment, defense, security, tourism, and people-to-people exchanges with the countries of the region. For all interested states, including Italy, an emerging Indo-Pacific strategy should aim at maintaining peace, stability, and lowering and avoiding tensions. This is crucial in ensuring free trade, security, and prosperity for all. In this respect, such a strategy needs to emphasize the concept of ASEAN centrality as contained in the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, and that any form of cooperation should be based on or complement the areas of cooperation through the existing ASEAN mechanisms. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to questions.
Grazie mille,
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'd like to ask colleagues whether they might have questions. Honorable Quartapelle, Vice Chair. Thank you. I see that the ambassador has an extensive experience in negotiations on the banning of nuclear weapons. And this is one of the issues that we deem to be most sensitive in terms of national security and global security as well. With regard to this point, based on your experience, what might be some concerns and what are some constructive aspects that we should focus on? This committee often discussed the opportunity for Italy to be part of the observer countries to the TPMW, but it was never something that came to fruition. Are there areas of engagement that our country ought to consider, do you think, in order to strengthen the concept of security, but also reduce risks? Thank you.
grazie.
Thank you. We have the Honorable Mr. Orsini, who's asked to speak. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your most interesting presentation. A few years back, I had the privilege of visiting your beautiful country. Among the other things that I appreciated, in addition, of course, to the great natural beauty, technological development in the capital and historical cities, is the fact that Malaysia is an Islamic country in which Islam expresses itself in dialogue and openness and tolerance. And this makes Malaysia an important bastion. It's not the same all over the world, I'm afraid. The situation of Islamic countries is not the same as that of Malaysia. The crisis in the Middle East, just to establish a direct connection here, notwithstanding all, the general aspects that we all share. Of course, we all do hope for a peaceful solution to the crisis, but there are many threats. For example, the Houthi-backed or the Iran-backed groups like the Houthis, and it does imperil international trade. And of course, Malaysia is very much involved, is quite an important player in international trade, because the commercial transaction system between the East and the West concerns you as a country directly. Are you alarmed by this situation? What is your opinion on things? Thank you. Thank you. We have yet another question from the Honorable Mr. Billy. Thank you. I too would like to thank the ambassador for being here with us. Ambassador, I'd like to ask you the following question. With regard to relations with China and the U.S., considering that China is clearly a large market, I'm not going to say that it's the most important national or domestic market globally, but it is a large market. It's definitely a superpower commercially, but also technologically. Equally, it is also to be considered that China is a non-democratic dictatorship, which presents quite a lot of critical issues. So its industrial, foreign, and commercial policy are very harsh. The economic, political, and trading conflict with the U.S. has experienced ups and downs, although in recent years it's been quite harsh. Malaysia, I know, has taken its distance from both countries over the years, clearly, and of course, understandably so, because of its economic, commercial, and geographic position. And therefore, I'd like to ask you, do you have an update on this regarding the United States and China? What is the position, the stance of your country, considering the new policymakers in your country and the new government? Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. I now would like to give the floor back to the ambassador to respond to these questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If I can answer the questions in the order that they came about. On the first question about nuclear weapons and what areas of possible engagement there are, the cornerstone of the international system when it comes to disarmament and non-proliferation is the NPT. TPNW came about in 2017. I was part of the Malaysian delegation in that process, and it came into force a couple of years back. These are two important cornerstones of the disarmament and non-proliferation architecture. We have seen an erosion of that, especially with regard to tensions between East and West over the number of years with different treaties that were meant to lead to stability being taken away by the various countries. Of course, as Malaysia, I would clearly encourage Italy to become party to the TPNW, but we also understand that there are difficulties with the fact that Italy is part of NATO and part of the common defense posture of NATO, where nuclear weapons is part of that. Nonetheless, I think as interim steps, what you had mentioned just now about Italy becoming an observer country to the TPNW, I think that would be a positive step. There were difficulties in the process leading up to the TPNW, and even now, where some countries, especially those that are part of alliances with nuclear weapons have somewhat boycotted, so we say, the TPNW process. But we have to also recognize the fact that this treaty is in force. Almost 2/3 of the countries of the globe are either parties to it or signatories to it. So there is a need to hear that voice of nuclear disarmament. And there are steps within the treaty that lead to eventual disarmament, but recognizing the fact that some countries may still be dependent on nuclear weapons in terms of their defense posture in the time being. So it's not you join the treaty, you get rid of it. There are steps to it. So I think a gradual approach may be one way to go. And of course, as Malaysia, I would definitely encourage Italy to be part of that, if anything, as an observer. With regard to the second question, and thank you very much about your kind words about Malaysia. We are indeed a country that's proud of our multiracial, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious heritage. You can see even from my colleagues, we all come from different parts of Malaysia. Of course, she's not, Eleonora is Italian, but we consider her an honorary Malaysian. But to answer your question, with regard to the situation in the Middle East and the solution to this is an immediate ceasefire. We are appalled, of course, as all countries, about what happened on 7th October, but nothing justifies the steps that are being taken by Israel now in terms of attacking the people of Gaza and preventing humanitarian assistance from coming in and even blocking it. This has gone on for too long. There needs to be an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, permanent one. With regard to what you mentioned about the effects on trade, especially in the Red Sea, this is something that is very difficult, and we are very alarmed at that. Indeed, it does affect our trade, but we believe that the solution to that is a stop to the Israeli attacks in Gaza. On the third question, with regard to China and the US, you used the term of Malaysia has decided to taken a step back from both. The question was an update on Malaysia's stance with regard to US and China. Both countries are close friends. We have very strong relations with both in many areas, whether that's trade, investment, defense cooperation with the United States, in terms of people-to-people interactions. So there's a lot that is positive and continues to be positive between our relations between Malaysia and both the United States and China. I believe the question was also asking, has there been any change with the new government? The new government, not so new by the way, this government has been around since October 22. That was the date of our last general election. So our policy remains the same. I had mentioned in my opening statement about the fact that although we've changed governments with elections and so on, the foreign policy has remained consistent. And when it comes to both the United States and China, our position is that we are friends with both, we have good relations with both, and we work with each other, with both countries when it comes to the various difficult issues that do take place. So for example, when we're talking about South China Sea, when we're talking about other issues, we speak to them, but then we also use ASEAN, and that's why the emphasis on ASEAN centrality in my opening statement, because the mechanisms that exist within ASEAN, such as the ASEAN Regional Forum, the ASEAN +3, which includes Japan, Korea, and China, other +1 mechanisms with the US, with Australia, and so on. It is a way and a forum that brings these countries together and able to discuss these security issues, very difficult security and strategic issues, and ASEAN is able to do so. Thank you.
Grazie davvero.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. This has been a very important contribution to the deliberations of this committee. As as you said yourself, we do see your country's commitment to see to it that trade may prosper and flourish. You talked to us about prosperity, security, trade, and economic exchanges and trade, but in order for that to happen, the Indo-Pacific has to remain a stable area. Of course, you do have to continue to secure navigation to make the maritime zones safe and secure for navigation. And the colleague earlier alluded to the situation in the Red Sea. We need to make sure that there is a global system of rules that allows for safe and secure navigation. Only this will make it possible for us to step up our trade in many areas, including tourism and defense. Thank you very much, and we will continue to work together to have your constant contribution in building, finally, an Italian systemic approach to the Indo-Pacific. Thank you.